Hi, my name is Ravi Mistry. I'm a photographer and Lightroom expert. Today we're going to be talking about Adobe software Lightroom, especially the classic version. We're going to be talking about the interface and how it is useful for you as a photographer. It doesn't matter what genre you shoot. Let's jump onto it. Let me share my software interface and we'll start right away. Okay, so as you can see, this is a library module of Lightroom. There are multiple modules you'll be able to see. If you have your Lightroom just started, you will see lots of different modules, which is library, then you have develop, then you have map, book, slideshow, print, and web. Today we're going to be talking about library and develop only. So let me close them slowly, one by one. So that way we have less clutter to work with. Okay. Now, Lightroom works very simple way. It works in a catalog. So each catalog will hold your files, your folders. It will make a previews of those. So previews are a virtual copy of your actual file, which can be NEF, which can be CR2, which can be ARW, whatever, it doesn't matter what brand you use. Now, as you can see in library module, we'll have to see from the left, center, and right. So on the left, as you can see, there are multiple folders. On the center, you see lots of photographs. And on the right, you see certain quick adjustments and other data. So now, let me start with the very first thing you do when you open Lightroom. You import the photographs. So I'm going to press import. Now, I have already inserted one of the cards, one of the memory cards from my camera, which is from Nikon D600. And as you can see, it has certain photos. It has selected those. This little check mark, that means you have selected those photos to import. You can always uncheck them. You can go uncheck all or check them all. You can change the sorting order with the file name or with the capture time. Okay. So for example, if I just want to import 3 photographs, so I'm going to uncheck all. I'm going to check 1, I'm going to check 2, and I'm going to check 3. And then I'm going to go ahead and just check mark 1, and it will check mark all 3 of them because they were selected. Now, from the left, it is very simple. It's going to show you the source. Where are you importing your photographs from? It can be a card, it can be your hard drive. In the center, it will ask you what photos and what you want to do with them. You can copy them, you can move them, or you can add them from the existing drives. And on the right, you will see if you want to rename them, if you want to add certain characters like a metadata or something like that, and if you want to apply any presets, if you want to add to certain collections, and where these photographs are going to be copied to. As you can see on my right, if I break it down all the way, so it is showing me it is going to create a folder 2020, and in 2020 it will have this new folders created. Now it is doing that because I have selected it is organized. It is supposed to be organized by date. It can be organized into a specific folder as well if you want. Okay, so you're going to stick to the date as of right now. On the right, it will ask you to build a preview. So now Lightroom actually doesn't touch your raw file at all. What it will do, it will make a preview of that file and will show you in the Lightroom. It will ask you to make an adjustment to it, and then you have to export it as a separate file. But in order to export, you need to have that raw file somewhere on your drive. Right? So the easiest method to deal with is build a standard preview. If you don't have enough space on your drive, you can go with the minimal, but it will just reduce your post-production speed slightly. There are other options as well. One-to-one copy is a full copy of your raw file. And then there is another option which is called build a smart preview. So smart preview is for when you copy everything into Lightroom, then you can remove your raw files from the existing drive and put it somewhere to make room in your computer. You can edit all the photos, and when you are done editing, when you want to export it, that's when you want to import those raw files back into your computer. So that way it becomes very remote. If you want to work in a very finite space laptop, if your storage is an issue, this is a very good option. So I'm not going to make any smart previews. And next you have don't import suspected duplicates. Meaning if I'm using the same card over and over with a multiple shoot, if I have already imported these files, it will not allow me to re-import it. So it will not make dual copies, right? Then you can rename this files according to whatever the sequence you like. Then you can apply any specific presets if you want, and you can add metadata. So test online, whatever you want to write, whatever these keywords might help you. And you can always create your metadata file, which includes all your information. I have already created mine, which is right here. So now what you want to do is go ahead and import it. Sorry. So as you can see on the left, it will show you all the statuses. So whatever Lightroom is doing, it will show you right here in the status. Now on the left, as you can see, there are lots of other folders which I have already imported for our demonstration purpose. So let me go ahead and open one of the folders. Now, folders you can only access in the library module, but there are other things you can do in the library module as well. For example, this set of photographs, for example, I want all of them to be black and white. So I can do that right away. Can turn them into black and white. And as you can see, one by one, they are all turning into black and white. So in library module, you can do lots of adjustment on lots of files straight away, but those are all quick adjustment. The other thing you can do is you can select the photos very quickly. Most of you might, if you are experienced with Lightroom, you have faced certain difficulties browsing the photos faster. So if you want to browse your photos faster, the easiest method is to browse them in library. As you can see, it is quite quick. Now you can apply certain presets to them as well. So let me go back to the index view, and then I can select certain photos and go ahead and apply. Let's apply my preset. So now, as you can see, it is being applied on all these photos straight away. All right. There are lots of other things you can do with the library module. You can apply certain changes. You can see what your camera settings are, what camera has been used, and you can change your dates and time as well. The other important thing we want to look at library module is metadata. So here you can see what camera has been used and what lenses have been used here. So you can select them one by one specifically. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and click all the lenses. Then you can select your attribute. So if you have applied flags or color coding to anything, it will be applied straight away. All right, next thing we wanna do is actually edit the files. So let's edit this one. Now in this file, you can see the focus and everything looks good. The exposure looks fine, but this is what your usually raw file looks like. Now in develop module, that's where you actually make your adjustment. That's where you actually edit your files. So on the left, as you can see, you have your navigator, where you can actually, zoom and browse your photo faster. You can apply specific zoom levels to it. And then presets, it will have your presets. So we'll get to the presets later. Sorry. All right, next we have snapshots. If you have created any snapshots, then you can use that. You can have your history, and you can have your collections. Now, if you don't know what collections is, if you're working on a very certain project, like let's say black and white portraits, or uh, any other series like architecture or landscapes only, or XYZ place landscapes, you can have all those import, placed under the certain collections. All right, so that was our left part of the whole user interface. In the center, as you can see, you have your photo wide open. This bottom is a tool area, so you can press T to toggle on and off. It will show you the comparison. So if I want to compare the same photo with some other photo, I can do that. And this is to compare the same photo before and after. All right. If you want to soft proof, just go ahead and click on the soft proof, so it will compare with the white backdrop. Now on the right, top part is your histogram. If you don't know histogram, it's very simple. On the left, you have blacks, then you have shadows, then you have midtones, and then you have highlights, and on the very right, you have whites. So if your photo is clipping anywhere, it will show up here. And you see these little squares on the right, on the left, you can just click them and it will show you if it is clipping. So my photo is clipping right over here. So these pixels are completely black. But if I increase all the way, if I increase my exposure all the way, and if anything is clipping, it will show me in the red. Okay, so this is very helpful when you're not sure about if your monitor is calibrated correctly, or if the brightness is correct or not. So pay attention to the histogram. It's a good indicator, just like fuel or oil gauge in your car. All right, so let's move forward. Then first adjustment you will have is if you want to treat this photograph in a color, or if you want to treat this in a black and white. So you can choose either one of them, and you can start from your starting point. It can be a color treatment, or it can be a black and white treatment, just like back in the days in darkroom. Next thing is your profile. So as in your camera, you have lots of profiles available here. If you have shot raw, you will have all your camera profiles available right here. So in my Z6, there are a bunch of color profiles which I can apply straight away. So I can use those, or I can use the one provided by Lightroom. So I'm going to go ahead and use the camera matching, and I'm going to put it on, let's say portrait, since it is a portrait. So I'm going to close it. So it will apply certain adjustments like colors, hues, certain contrast, things like those. Next thing we have is a white balance. So in digital photograph, your white balance is always compared to 18% gray. 18% gray is your base color. So if you have any gray card or any material for the 18% gray, if you have used in the photograph, you can go ahead and take this picker and apply on it. So let's say I'm gonna use this as a reference, that shoe. So shoe is white, but it's close to gray, so I can use that. If I apply it on the blue, everything will become warm, because it is now considering this blue as 18% gray. Right, so let's go back to the one we selected earlier. You can always have different settings available as a preset, just like daylight or cloud or shade or whatever. Generally, you have all these settings on your camera, but if you have shot raw, you don't have to worry about it. You can just apply it straight away. All right, so we're gonna keep it for the daylight. Now, you can always fine tune your temperature and tint. Now, these are only 4 colors of the 6 colors you can fine tune in managing the colors. You have red, green, and blue, and then you have magenta, cyan, magenta, and yellow. So they are complementary colors to each other. So here we have blue and yellow, and you have magenta and green. So just in case, if you want to add red to the file, you increase yellow and you increase magenta and you have red. And similarly with the cyan as well. Now you have exposure. Now this basic panel is very self-explanatory, but let's go through it very quickly. You can adjust your exposure. You can adjust your contrast. So the contrast is simply you are increasing the values of the highlights and decreasing the values for the shadows. So you're darkening your shadows and you're brightening the highlights. You can control them separately as a highlight and shadows, as you can see. And you can control whites and you can control blacks. So if you want that crunchy contrast without adding too much contrast globally, you can just decrease your blacks. And if you hold option to each of the settings, it will show you if they're clipping anywhere. As you can see, if I reduce black all the way, it will show me all these areas which are dark right here are pretty much black. Okay, so we're gonna stop right there. Texture, clarity, and dehaze are very, sorry. Texture and clarity and dehaze are pretty much a contrast-based situation. So let's say texture will add contrast on a very pixel level, as you can see here. Clarity is depending on the edges of the contrast. So if you have something bright and dark placed at the same place, for example, right here, it will increase the brightness of the edge of the lighter side, and it will decrease the exposure of the blacks on the darker side. And dehaze is basically a huge contrast, like the contrast on steroids. So it's very, very impactful. So when you have hazy photos, you can apply it. Vibrance and saturation are completely depending on intensity of the color. So saturation is a global increment in the all the colors, and vibrance will increase only intensity of the colors which are not so saturated. Okay, so those are the basic adjustment. All the other tools we can look into in the advanced session of the Lightroom. Let me show you very quickly how to export this photo. So I'm gonna, my bad. Before that, I'm gonna show you the very easy tool to use if you want to crop the photo. So as you can see, this photograph is quite tilted. I'm just gonna go ahead and correct it. And there you go. So with the crop tool, you can rotate and you can change the aspect ratios as well. It's a very useful standard cropping tool. So there we go. Now to export this file, you're gonna right click, go to export and export again. Here you have a bunch of settings. So where you want to export it to? So let's say desktop for this example. Then you can rename the file if you want. And these are your quality settings for the JPEG. So we're gonna export everything in JPEG because we can use it everywhere. So I can choose my color space. I can choose my format. I can choose the quality of my JPEG. I can limit the size. Let's say 15 MB for this. Then I can resize on a specific size if I want, just in case if I have any regulated thing. So I can go ahead and apply pixel to pixel. And I can sharpen it for the screen or for the paper. Then you can remove all the metadata if you want. And if you want to apply any watermarks, you can apply watermarks. Right? And after post-production, if you want to see the photograph, you can do that, or you can open it in any other softwares as well. So we're gonna say show it on a Finder, and we'll go ahead and press export. So this was the very basics of Lightroom. As you can see right here, we have our photograph, and it is with the watermark. So hope you enjoyed this session. Hope you learned out of it. Go ahead and subscribe to this channel if you want to learn more. All right. Thank you.